The viewing chamber hummed with tension as the elite guard of the Vrax Empire assembled. Their armored forms cast long shadows across the observation deck, each warrior bearing scars from 100 campaigns. They had come to witness what they believed would be an execution disguised as ceremony. At the center of their attention stood Leonardo, a human xenobiologist whose hands trembled slightly as he approached the containment field. Beyond the shimmering barrier, 3 Vraxian cubs huddled together, their scales beginning to shimmer with the telltale iridescence of their first transformation. "He won't last 5 minutes," growled Commander Thexkar, his mandibles clicking with barely concealed anticipation. "No off-worlder has ever survived the first change proximity. The cub's instincts will tear him apart." Maltida, the only human member of the guard, stood apart from her comrades. Her jaw was set, eyes fixed on Leonardo with an intensity that made several warriors shift uncomfortably. She had argued against this trial for 3 rotations, citing their customs and the cruelty of using sentient beings as test subjects. But the Vraxian Council had been clear. If humans wanted access to their worlds, they needed to prove they could withstand the most sacred and dangerous of their rituals. Leonardo had volunteered. Of course he had. Maltida remembered his words from the night before. "If we can't show them we understand their nature, we'll never be more than curiosities to them. Someone has to bridge this gap." The containment field dropped with a sound like breaking glass. The transformation began immediately. The cubs, no larger than earth wolves but infinitely more deadly, convulsed as their bodies began the ancient change. Bones lengthened and twisted. Extra limbs erupted from their torsos, and their gentle chirping turned into screams that made even the hardened warriors wince. Their scales hardened into blade-like protrusions, and their eyes began to glow with bioluminescent fury as primal instincts overwhelmed their conscious minds. Every Vraxian in the room knew what came next. The pain would drive the cubs into a frenzy. They would attack anything that moved, unable to distinguish friend from foe. Even their own mothers kept their distance during the first change, maintaining control only through pheromone signals and armored barriers. Leonardo didn't run. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he dropped to his knees and opened his arms. "What is he doing?" hissed Captain Velorna, her claws extending involuntarily. Maltida's hand moved to her weapon, though she knew she'd never reach him in time if things went wrong. "What he does best," she whispered. Being impossibly stubbornly human, the first cub lunged, its newly formed talons aimed at Leonardo's throat. In that frozen instant, every warrior in the room tensed, ready to witness the inevitable carnage. But Leonardo didn't dodge. He caught the cub mid-leap, wrapping his arms around its convulsing form and pulling it against his chest. "I know," he said softly, his voice somehow carrying across the chamber. "I know it hurts." "I've got you." The cub thrashed, its claws raking across Leonardo's arms, drawing blood that soaked into his sleeves. But he held on, one hand cradling the creature's head while the other supported its twisting spine. His face contorted with pain, but his grip never wavered. The second and third cubs attacked simultaneously, climbing Leonardo's body with their newly multiplied limbs. He was being torn apart, his uniform shredded, blood flowing freely from dozens of wounds. Maltida took a step forward, but Commander Thexkar's massive arm blocked her path. "Wait," the commander said, and there was something new in his voice, something like awe. Leonardo was humming, a low rhythmic sound that seemed to resonate through the chamber. It wasn't a Vraxian frequency, it couldn't be, he was human, but somehow it seemed to reach the cubs through their pain. His body swayed gently, rocking them like he would comfort any frightened child, even as they continued to claw and bite in their transformation frenzy. "You're becoming something beautiful," Leonardo murmured, his voice cracking as a particularly vicious swipe opened a gash across his cheek. "I see you. All of you. The pain is temporary. You're going to be magnificent." Minutes passed like hours. Leonardo's blood pooled on the floor beneath him. His skin hung in tatters and his breath came in ragged gasps. But he never let go. He held all 3 cubs through every spasm, every scream, every moment of their agonizing metamorphosis. And slowly, impossibly, the cubs began to calm. Their convulsions lessened. Their screams faded to whimpers, and their eyes, those glowing feral eyes, began to clear with the first hints of consciousness returning. They were still in pain, still transforming, but they were no longer lost in it. They had an anchor. They had Leonardo. When the transformation finally completed, the chamber was silent. 3 fully changed Vraxian juveniles lay curled in Leonardo's arms, their new forms still steaming from the metamorphosis. They chirped softly, nuzzling against the human who had held them through the worst experience of their young lives. Leonardo looked up at the observation deck, his face pale from blood loss but wearing a small triumphant smile. Then he collapsed. Maltita was through the barrier before anyone could stop her, catching Leonardo before he hit the ground. Medical teams swarmed the chamber, but she was the one who held him, her own tears mixing with his blood. "You magnificent idiot," she whispered. "You beautiful, brave fool." Commander Thexkar descended from the observation deck, his massive form moving with unusual gentleness. He looked at the cubs now protectively surrounding Leonardo's unconscious form, refusing to let the medics approach until Maltita calmed them with soft words and careful gestures. "I have been elite guard for 30 cycles," Thexkar said, his voice thick with emotion that no translator could fully convey. "I have witnessed the first change of hundreds of our young. Never, not once, has an outsider survived proximity without armor. Never has anyone survived contact." He knelt beside Leonardo, placing one massive claw on the human's shoulder with surprising tenderness. But he didn't just survive. He gave them something we never could. The commander looked at Maltita, and in his eyes was something humanity had fought centuries to earn from the stars: respect. He gave them peace in the pain. He showed them they were not alone. As medical scanners worked to stabilize Leonardo's vitals, the 3 cubs pressed closer, their purring a sound of contentment and bonding that would mark Leonardo as their guardian for life. In Vraxian culture, such bonds were sacred, unbreakable. Maltita held Leonardo's hand as the medics worked, watching his chest rise and fall with shallow breaths. Around them, the elite guard stood in respectful silence, witnessing not just a trial's end, but the beginning of true understanding between species. Sometimes, the bridge between worlds isn't built with technology or treaties. Sometimes it's built with open arms and the willingness to hold another through their darkest transformation. No matter the cost, Leonardo had proven that humans understood the most fundamental truth of the universe. That connection transcends biology. That compassion knows no species boundaries. And that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's love strong enough to stand firm in the face of it. As the medics finally stabilized him and began the long process of healing his wounds, one of the cubs, the first who had lunged at him, climbed onto his chest and settled there, standing guard over the human who had become something unprecedented in Vraxian history, a firstborn guardian, honored across worlds, forever changed by the trial he had survived. And in the observation deck above, warriors who had doubted humanity's place among the stars began to understand that these strange, fragile creatures from Earth possessed something that all the armor and weapons in the galaxy couldn't match: the stubborn, defiant courage to love what could destroy them, and the strength to hold on until the transformation was complete.